as I was in school, finding out I was studying marketing under the impression that I actually be doing what I'm doing today. I'm just gonna take this moment to actually drop out of here as well and just go full force on it and see what I can get out of it. So I dropped out of school twice.
That's a record.
If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And like that sat with me for like the rest of my life. Honestly, I kind of look at it as like a marriage where if you really think about it, it's like you're signing off on this contract and it's all four of you and you're just like, okay, we're in this now. And we're like, are we like, did we put a ring on it or something?
Did you get prenup?
That weekend we did like 5 spec projects and it was like
In a weekend. All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Unfold podcast by Tenfold Production. Today I'm joined by
Adrian Amvari. Should I say my full name?
whatever you want, man.
I'll go by Articuno. No, my name.
I work for you, so.
My name is Adrian. I am an EP and director as well as a co-founder here at Tenfold.
Okay, cool. I guess first question, as always, how did you get into this crazy production world that we live in?
How did I get into this world? It's very funny. I actually used to own a GoPro back when I was first in university. And I just always wanted to like be able to just document stuff. I don't know what it looked like, but like at the time it was like the GoPro 4. And I'm like, I just want this. So I brought it on a vacation. And I made like an 8-minute recap video of my time there with my friends. And I was like, okay, there's something here, but like I didn't really like think to take it seriously. And then as I was in school, finding out I was studying marketing under the impression that I actually be doing what I'm doing today, which is very ironic. But as I was doing it for the first year and a half, I was like, oh, this is nowhere close to what I actually want to be doing. So long back and forth, I wasn't super passionate about it. And that kind of reflected in my marks. So I ended up I dropped out, pseudo kicked out, more or less. But
there's like a pattern amongst you guys.
Oh yeah. But it's kind of similar to like Justin's perspective, where I wasn't passionate enough about it, where I couldn't apply myself. And I feel like when I do apply myself, I actually do really well. But because I didn't enjoy it enough, I kind of took a step back and didn't apply myself the way I wanted to. So I dropped out, kicked out. And then I took a year off just to work. And around that time I was working in retail, and I worked in retail for a good 6-7 years, very long time. And then, cause I just didn't know like what I wanted to do specifically. And then one year, I got this kind of notification that like another college is doing this digital communications program. And one of the prerequisites was you got to pick up a camera and you're going to use this throughout your 4 years. I'm like, okay, this actually sounds really in line with like something that I want to be doing. It wasn't like super video and audio production, but it included that. So that really interested me. I did it for the first year, and 2 of the courses that was part of the curriculum was video and audio. And it's so ironic because that first year I ended the course with a 50.
Bro.
I know. But like, it was also because like, I feel like I do have this very ego thing where it's like, I already know a lot of this. So like, I think I can apply myself beyond like what the teacher is asking me. I wasn't the biggest fan of my teacher either, because he was I'm going to say my words, but all to say is like, I didn't really like the teacher, and I feel like I could have done way more. So finished the first year. Then that summer, my buddy, he got me acquainted with some people and kind of got me in the live entertainment space. So very close to nightlife. So I was doing a lot of recaps that summer, and it was actually like really lucrative for me. So I'm like, okay, I think there's something here. And then after that summer, I got connected with another person who got me this job as an editor for this like very small boutique agency, still kind of handling a lot of live entertainment, nightlife stuff. And then it got to a point where like I was doing my second year, and within the first 2 months, like it got so busy for me, like outside of school, like just because of the work I was doing, I was like, I'm just going to take this moment to actually drop out of here as well and just go full force on it and see what I can get out of it. So I dropped out of school twice.
That's a record. That's a tenfold record.
it's kind of insane to say the least, because now I just built up all this student loan debt for no reason. But
Mm.
I think it put me on the right path to get to where I am today, so to speak. But so I just decided to drop out, take a full force, and here I am.
You say it was very lucrative for you. Did you, at that point, were you taking it more seriously as like, oh, this is like a career that I can pursue?
Yeah, so actually, when the moment I found out it was quote unquote lucrative, I knew I could actually make a living out of this space when I actually quit my job in retail. So I was picking up a few jobs and I was still working retail, but then I realized it wasn't really conducive to me actually being as effective as I wanted to be. So I decided to just like quit my job in retail and just do this full time. And I was making way more money doing just this videography thing than I was working retail. And like I worked a lot less in comparison to just working like a 9 to 5 or 9 hour shift. And it was just not getting anything out of it anyway to like building a career. So I knew the moment like I could make something out of this when I actually quit my job in retail. And I was like, oh, this is this aha moment for me to maybe pursue this seriously because there's actually something here.
Mm-hmm. And what type of work were you doing back then? You were saying recaps, like recaps for what?
Yeah, just very videographer recap space, like nothing remotely close to the commercial world. Yeah, just like someone's holding an event. I'm just there to record, put a little edit together, and just call it a day. Get $500, and then move on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you, when you were doing that, did you see yourself taking like another step, or was it more of a like, I'll just kind of like stack these on top of each other?
It was very much just let me keep stacking this up, because while I did have this inkling in the back of my mind that I wanted to be in this world, I knew at the time that like I'm just going to keep focusing on this and actually just try to be as profitable as possible,
Mm-hmm.
because the main goal right now is to just like pay myself and actually make a living out of this. And then once I know I'm in a comfortable position, then let me see how I can pivot.
When did you meet the other guys? How did that connection happen for you?
So this was around the time of the pandemic. So before the pandemic, I got picked up by Inc. Entertainment, and they're like in Toronto, they're considered like the biggest hospitality group because they run all these nightclubs and restaurants. So I was working with them full time at the time, and like I felt like things were going really well and steady.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment pandemic hit, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm out of a job, and like because nothing's happening anymore.
Yeah.
So it was like a good 2-3 months where I was just doing nothing. And then a mutual friend of ours, her name is Nicole Shapiro, better known as NShaps. She started this Discord group because like she knew that a lot of us were in the same boat of like we're in this rut, no one's really doing anything, but at least we have this community that we can all kind of sit, talk together, and just kind of like shoot the shit. And like it was really great because I feel like that kind of helped bridge the gap in terms of me being able to meet people like Jason, people like Justin. Funny enough, I actually met Justin way before the Discord group, but it was only one time at like this random event that I saw him recapping it. I was like, oh, that's a sick camera. And he was like, yeah, like I'm just making it work. I'm like, God bless. And then we just kind of went our ways. And then I never thought I'd actually like get reconnected with him. So
Justin has actually met everyone in the world
at
some point by secret.
by some divine miracle. But
Yeah.
So around that time, that's where Jason got involved in the group. And then every now and then he would do these nightly sermons, and there would just be a bunch of us on. And what really like got me interested was the things that he was saying. And like he said one quote in particular that like really resonated with me, because it was something that like that's one of my personal mantras as well, where it's if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And like that sat with me for like the rest of my life till now, because I still hold true to that. But so what ended up happening was we got acquainted at like this one meetup, because again everyone's like not really doing anything. And then I got briefed on this job, and it was like really big, where I'm like, I know I can't do this by myself. Like this isn't the level of videography. And at the time I was seeing what Justin and Jason were doing. I'm like, this is really in line with the type of work that I want to be putting out and be around the people that I want to be around with. So I messaged Jason on the side, and I'm like, hey man, I got this really big job, and I know you and Justin have the know-how to do it. I don't have the resources particularly, but I know how to kind of do this stuff. I said, let's band together, let's tackle this project. And it was actually a really big project where like we all kind of made a decent amount of money out of it, and we kind of just went to our own devices. And then shortly after, I had a conversation with both of them. I'm like, hey guys, I really like this dynamic that we have, and like because we all got along like just right off the bat. And I think Justin talked about that too, where it's like being able to have a really solid chemistry just outside of like working conditions, but as friends, uh, it makes it really easy to just be able to do these projects together. So after that project went really well, we just kept stacking on more and more projects, whatever came through the door. We just kept doing it together. And like, it wasn't long after that Zach kind of joined the mix as well. So I would say Zach and I kind of joined in like not too far apart at the same time. So we ended up just being like this fantastic four of a group to just like whatever project came in, we did it. And then my favorite, I think the weekend that really solidified it was the Ari weekend. I know Justin just talked about it, but I think like that is like the one moment that really like snowballed us into what we are today, because we rented this mini LF camera, and I'll never forget it. Justin and I have this cinema camera at 2D house, and we're like, what the heck is this thing? And we were so lucky that the two people prepping camera next to us were like seasoned vets. I think it was Matt Barkley, and I forgot the first day season. I think it was Alex something. They were prepping the camera for a project. We're like, hey guys, we see you using the camera. Do you think you can help us out? And they're like, heck yeah. He hooked us up with a couple LUTs, and he got us like set up, and we're just like, okay, I think we're in a good spot to actually like do this. So, and then after that weekend, we did like 5 spec projects, and it was like
in a weekend.
And that was the first time for me doing something like that. And I was like, this is a lot, but also I really enjoy this process at the same time. And from there, it just kind of snowballed to what we are today.
Interesting. In a weekend, I guess you're already kind of EPing in that moment.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because like again, a lot of the big projects that came through the door, not to say like they didn't bring in projects as well, but I was very like, as much as I enjoy the creative process, I knew deep down that like I wouldn't be remotely successful if I didn't know how to work the numbers and be able to charge and put aside money. So I knew I was good from like a tax standpoint. It's funny, out of the group, everyone calls me the tax guy because I'm always asked, is like, is that with tax? Is that without tax? I'm like always a tax guy, because man, taxes are just going to screw us in the year following. So I'm like, I just always want to make sure we were good for the following year. So
in the year following,
yeah, and the year
for
following,
your whole life,
legit. And that just kept stacking and stacking. So when these projects came in, I'd always be able to just like, hey, I got this budget. I think if we spend X amount of dollars, I think we can profit this amount. So I always came with that mindset, because as much as I love the creative process, I also want to make money as well, because otherwise I love doing this as a hobby, and hopefully like, and I'm still doing this professionally like till this day, but I wouldn't also be doing it if I wasn't making money as well, right? So
interesting. I'm kind of seeing these like different roles, because I know we're a production company, but beyond that, we're still a business. I'm kind of seeing like all the roles fall into place. Like Jason, kind of like a CEO, like pushes the ideas forward. Justin keeps everyone together.
Yeah.
Then very interesting. It's very like stark contrast between being a creative and also handling like that financial side. Where do you get that side of your brain from?
It's an interesting question. I kind of attribute that to just being like a jack of all trades. And I feel like that has attributed to me understanding the production process. So like right now I've kind of classified myself as an EP and a director, but I've been wearing a lot of other hats between that. So like whenever a project came through the door, I'd either be the role of a first AC or a DP or a director, depending on the project and like the bandwidth of everybody else. Because as we were kind of growing as a group, I always had the mindset of like, let me just fill in a role to just get us moving forward in any capacity possible. And I was always comfortable doing those things. But at the end of the day, like, I think kind of what I said back before, that like, in order to be successful in the production business, you need to get a firm sense of the numbers. And that's where I kind of started like pseudo producing some other projects like in the last couple of years, because obviously we have a lot of expenses that we need to pay for, and we need to pay ourselves as well. So I always need to keep in mind that, like, obviously we love to do our spec projects and those cost money, but then when we get actual money jobs through the door, I want to make sure that like we're profiting off that as much as possible. So I'm not sure like where it really came from, but it was just always having this keen sense in mind to just make sure we're always making money, because if we're not, then we're obviously not doing this right.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, it's very important that you do that.
Yes.
I probably wouldn't be here right now. All right, cool. And then after that ARIA weekend, what were the results like for you? What did that generate for you in terms of jobs or connections?
It was very much like whatever just came through the door. Like we would post projects here and there, and then like I would post the stuff, Jason would post, Zach would post, Justin would post stuff. And it really just came down to like whatever just came through the door, just make ourselves available for it. Because for me, my mindset was like, even though we didn't make it official, I was like, these are the guys that I want to grow with, because they all get it. And like beyond them just getting it, we all kind of vibe with each other. So my main goal was just making sure to like keep moving this forward as much as possible. It ended up putting me in this role, like kind of mentioned before, of me just kind of being this jack of all trades. And like, because I very much love the DP side, and I still really love it too, because I love the technical side of like being able to like understand camera movement and how that impacts creative decisions of like what the director wants. But then I also love conceptualizing, and then I love like having big ideas and being able to bring that back to a DP. But then I have like this double mindset of like, okay, like I want to be this director DP, and I've done that once. I probably won't do it again just because of like what it entailed, but I think there's a better way to navigate that. And then again, like depending on what project came through the door, like if there were, I think the biggest example was a recent project that we did was Tangerine, where obviously we're way ahead of this already, but Jason was the director, Zach was DPing, and then I was EPing / producing, and then luckily had Chad to help me out on the producing side as well. So he's more line producing while I was like EPing. But I think I attribute myself as an EP because not only do I understand the production side, but I'm able to be very social and talk to clients as well. And I think that's very important in terms of just like treating, like, you can't treat these clients as clients. They're still people at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Because if you just say like, oh, like we can do this, this, or this, and you're just very production focused, and like you're kind of taking the fun out of it. It's like, so when I was sitting with client during that Tangerine job, like I know how Jason and Zach work. So even without having to ask them of something from client, I could easily just make a creative call to be like, oh, hey, can we do this? And I could be like, oh, they're doing this, this, and this, so we don't have to worry about that. And then after that, kind of just keep it to casual conversation, like, oh, how was your weekend? Like, what are you guys up to? One of the guys, I think one of the main guys, his son was golfing, and I'm so into golf, so I'm like, what's his handicap? Just like trying to take it away from the production side for a second, because, and I think they appreciate that, because you're not being so serious about it, and you're actually here not just for the fun of it, but because you want to make good work, right? So that was a reflection of how we grew as a group. There would be times where Justin was for a lot of his documentary projects, I would come in as a DP, especially for the travel jobs, because I was used to traveling as well, but then I still had that DP mindset at the time. So I think it kind of helped Justin in a sense of like, he can kind of focus on the creative side, and then let me be your tool, let me be the guy behind the camera, and let me get these shots for you. So because I think I understood the DP perspective, not to say more than him in that capacity, but where I could be more effective. So yeah, did I answer your question? I don't know. I think I just went off in a tangent.
I don't know, but I do want to zero on something specific that you said, that you wanted to keep pushing things forward, even though it wasn't like official. When did it become official? When did you realize that this could be something that would work out for all four of you?
I can't say there was an exact moment, but I would say maybe like after we did the Shopify project. But even then, like I would almost say like when we did the ARIA weekend.
Yeah.
I think that, because like I already knew that like these guys were great. They all get the process. We're all here for the same reason, because we wanted to elevate the work that we were doing. We wanted to bring something more to the table. And I knew at the back of my mind that I want to keep this as a thing as much as possible, because if this doesn't work out, then obviously it doesn't work out, and like that's just the reality of it. But I think I've pushed really hard to just make sure like everyone was on the same page, but also making sure we were all happy with what we were doing. And like I had my moments too where I was like wasn't super content with how do I say it? Like there were certain projects I wanted to do but didn't get that opportunity. But I also knew at the back of my mind that like my time would come, and it's getting there too, right? Because I just directed my first project, which I'm super proud of. But I think I'm very grateful that I was able to come up with these guys, because I feel like if I didn't, I don't think I would be where I am today.
Mm-hmm.
So I attribute all my success to them, because they are what helped me and helped us get to where we are today. So I definitely give it to the RE weekend for sure.
Okay, cool. When do you think was your guys' first like big step from kind of just doing this, working together, into stepping into that mentality of, oh, we're like a business?
Mm-hmm. I would say the Shopify project, because it was really funny. Actually, I'm not sure if I should say this, because technically for Shopify, Tenfold at the time wasn't considered a corporation.
You were registered.
Like they were a sole or a partnership, so it's still a business. They were registered, but like not as a corporation. So the big brands, when the big brands see you as a partnership or a sole proprietor, I don't think they take you as seriously optically, instead of you being a corporation.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I feel like after that project, like we still did it, and like we did it fantastically. Client loved it, and they like it was like this very minute thing, but I think it actually meant a lot more than we realized. And I think it was that moment that we're like, okay, we need to incorporate our business. We need to make this like full-fledged, like an actual thing. So when we incorporated it, like it was that moment right there on Shopify. We're like, okay, I think this is what. Obviously there's a lot of other steps, but I think this is like that one big step forward that we kind of like all come together and we say, okay, this is it. Like we should actually incorporate now. Honestly, I kind of look at it as like a marriage where if you really think about it, it's like you're signing off on this contract and it's all four of you and you're just like, okay, we're in this now. And we're like, are we like, do we put a ring on it or something?
Did you get a prenup?
Actually, I need to get a prenup. But yeah, I think it was that moment right there where we're just like, yeah, like this is, I think, the moment where we like actually take this really seriously, because then we can actually start posing ourselves as this production company, like we're the real deal. And just and if it means putting that INC at the end of our name just to make it official, then so be it.
Yeah. I've had so many conversations so far with the other guys about more of like the creative process behind running a production company, but I feel like you're a great person to kind of pick your brain on how to actually manage the financial and business side of it more. I know it's a very broad and big topic, but if you were to summarize, like, what do the steps look like from going from just like a guys like working, picking up a camera and shooting video, into managing a full-fledged business? Like what are some key steps that someone should hit if they were trying to replicate something like Tenfold?
Honestly, the biggest thing, and like we said this all the time, where it's like we need a producer. Like you flat out need a producer. And I think that is the major difference between you just kind of picking up a camera versus you actually handling it as a business. And like, again, during our upbringing, I was like pseudo producing because I felt like it was so funny. I produced one job, like just like I only wore the producer hat, and I just did it so naturally well that like all the guys were like, you just showed your hand, eh? I'm like, no, please. Let me tell you something. But in that moment, it's like, because I was very much the numbers guy and you kind of keep things organized, but I knew it wasn't something that I wanted to do, but it was something that like I needed to do because I knew I could very, very well fit in this role naturally and kind of just like do it with my eyes closed. To say it's like a skill per se, but it's like, I think it's something that we needed. But I think it's very important to have a producer because as we've done bigger projects, you can't be wearing both hats. It's really hard because then like if you're thinking about how to execute a project creatively and then all of a sudden now you got to think of the numbers, then it gets really, it becomes really easy to just like disassociate from both and kind of not have a clear mind as to how to navigate through the numbers or how to navigate creatively. So I think it's very important to just have somebody that like handles the numbers, handles the crew, locations, all that stuff. And like it gets deeper and deeper. Like as these budgets get bigger, that's something that we realize too, that like just because you get $100,000 project, a $200,000 project doesn't mean you're going to be profiting a lot either. I mean, you could try your best, but the higher the budget, the more that needs to go into this production.
Yeah.
Because there's something to be said about how you put yourself up optically. And that was like a big thing for us, was like, we always want to make sure that we're coming with our best. And if it means getting the additional crew, if it means getting a first AD, all these little things that's going to make this a very high level production, then that's what we got to do. Right. But that takes having a producer to some capacity to be able to handle communications with the client, but then also, again, funnel the numbers. And like, I saw this template not so long ago where I'm like, oh my God, what the heck is this? But then after a couple run throughs, I'm like, oh, this is actually like really easy. It's just like a bunch of sections with like roles and like different categories. But as long as you understand what these roles are and what you need it for, it's very easy to just like pull all these numbers together and kind of have something that's organized, especially if you want to show line items to clients. That was something that I never did. Like when I first started out, like I worked with this other boutique agency. He was a friend of mine. He would always ask me for like a breakdown of costs, and I'd be like, it just costs what it costs.
It's expensive.
Yeah. He's like, why is this $2,000? I'm like, because it's $2,000. And then like we just get into we bicker about it. And I'm like, well, there's a reason why we're bickering about it, because I'm not showing you the costs as it is. I'm just trying to make $1, which like that didn't sit right with me. Now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, this was not the right way to go about it. But I also didn't have these resources or understand that enough to be like, how do I actually navigate through the space? So if I could take that all back, I definitely would, and actually do it properly, because I always want to make sure I bring out my best. But yeah, in that moment, it was just me realizing that, actually all of us, and we say this like after every project before we kind of made it official, we're like, we need a producer, guys. We need a producer. Like it just like that was always the main topic of discussion. So as we kind of became an incorporation, I've been kind of fitting in that role. When like bigger projects come in, I'll kind of fit this role of like being an EP and a producer, just so kind of like help manage the numbers and be able to kind of put us in a position where we are still profiting, but then also still making really good work, because you still need money to be able to make great stuff. Like I would say like a lot of our spec projects did require some dollars to make it the best that it can be. So
for the people, just in case they don't know, what is the difference between a producer and an executive producer? In the commercial world, because I know it's different for different like narrative productions.
I'm going to say I'm not the right person to ask this, because I think the way we kind of do things are a little bit unorthodox and unconventional. If someone was looking at on the outside, because I don't think I can officially call myself an executive producer, but I kind of take the role of one to like some capacity where like, so to give that differentiation, as an EP, you're kind of handling all communications at the front end. So that means getting briefed on the project from the client, seeing who's right for the job, and kind of handling communications from there. At no point should the director, unless it's a creative call, like with the creative directors on the agency side or client side, or the DP, should be talking to client. That's where I come in as an EP to kind of facilitate that communication. EPs are also responsible of trying to find funding for any project. So especially from a spec capacity, or like even if there's like a really cool idea and we want to make it a thing, it's the job of the EP to be able to find or source that funding to make it happen. While with the producer, they are very, they look at the production, like each production logistically, and see how they can manage the budget to be able to make it work. So for example, say we have a $50,000 project come in. It's not on the EP to figure out how to go about that budget, that's on the producer. The
Yeah.
producer fills in those roles. They find the line producers to be able to find all the above the line and below the line crew. Those are terms I just learned recently. Even
Whoa.
that, whoa.
What is this, a language you're speaking all of a sudden?
That's what I'm saying, right? It's like even all this stuff, like I'm only learning recently, but it's like it gets so in depth. But going back to it, the producer, they're in charge of just making sure the production runs smoothly, and they're trying to allocate the dollars the best way that they can so the production can make money and everyone's getting their fair rates. So for example, there's this magic number called 23% where the production needs to take 20% off any budget, as well as 3% for insurance. And I only learned that like a year and a half ago, but I've been using that religiously now because it's kind of helped us as a production company be able to not necessarily profit, but be able to at least make money in some capacity so we can just operate, right? Because I think that's something that like a lot of people like myself struggled with is how can I bring in money so we can still operate? And if you can't bring the money in for your business, not only for yourself, but for the business, then the business can't run.
Yeah. The 23% rule,
So I'm going to say a rule, but it's like an unspoken thing with like all production companies that like they all do 23%.
Mm-hmm. I see. That's good to know because I feel like a lot of people are just kind of charging day rates and stuff. They don't really know. That's the difference between like operating and just working.
It's a huge difference. I mean, like there was a point in time where like we kind of just like came in as like filling in the role of a cam op, first AC, and like that was it, right? And we knew that like the more we could take on, the more we can make money. And that's just the reality of it, right? Like if you're coming in as just, if you're only a DP, then that 23% rule doesn't apply because you're not a production company. You're just filling in this role. But if you are running a production company, you need to account for costs. Like you need to operate from a day to day, like all the subscriptions that you pay for. We have a studio, we need to pay for that too. So like all these dollars that we come in, it's like, we need that in order to actually stay running. And then hopefully if we're filling in the role of a director or a DP, at least we can kind of make money in that capacity, but it's not always the case.
Okay. All this like financial talk is
I know,
frying my brain. So let's take a different step.
Let's do it.
Because you wear so many different hats. You're also a director, you're also a DP. How do you juggle all these things, and what is your special approach when it comes to directing?
So I think that's something I'm still trying to find my voice in. I've done a lot of projects, but like nothing I was super proud of until like this year. I just wrapped up the Arc'teryx project, and like that was like, I consider that my official directing debut, because it was something that I actually had no handle on from a DP side, even though like I did know how to technically execute it. I think I had to like take a step back and just be like, I can't look at this as a DP. Otherwise, I'm just going to get too lost in the sauce, and I'm going to lose the whole point of the creative concept, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where I considered that to be my debut as a director, because I was able to just focus on the concept and just storyboard it and just think of it like very broadly, in the sense that like, okay, I want this shot to tell me this because this is how the story is rolling through. And then finally have that conversation with Zach, who was the DP on it, and just be like, okay, how do we execute this? I kind of missed that conversation because it got too deep. And when I pitched him back, he was like, oh, what if we did this? I'm like, I'm sorry, but we have to do it this way.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, okay. But he was able to do it like no problem. And like, I think what's nice is because I know the role of a DP, I think I could communicate a lot easier with him to be like, hey, like I think this would be really cool as like a dolly in, and like we can speak that same language. But then I'm still trying to learn the language of the director, like speaking about tonality and mood. When I think when people talk about lighting, it's like I look at it very technically versus like what mood is it trying to bring. It's like, even though I kind of think it's the same thing, but it's like, oh, I want this lighting to feel all warm and cozy. It's like, okay, what's that? Like, where's the difference in that, right? So I definitely am going to push myself a lot more this year to do more directing pieces. Like I want to do the Sculpt spec, try to have a little fun with that, but then also build a comedy reel, because like I very much love comedy, and like I think like I know I'm not the only person, because anytime I talk about like comedy stuff, like I'm always talking to Justin about that, even sometimes Zach too,
Yeah.
because I think we just all love that space, and I think we kind of want to make something out of it. But there's a big difference between like if we look at something like an Addidum, sophisticated fun, versus like I'll look at Mohair, because I think Mohair, funny enough, that was the one it's so interesting. Zach was the director and I was the DP on that.
What?
Yeah, I know. It was like, and that was like my first official project as a DP,
Uh-huh.
because like I was super proud of that project too, and I was so grateful to be able to collaborate with Zach on that, because it was so funny. Like Arterix, he came in like he knew how to talk in the DP language as well, so him and I together, I knew we could easily like execute this, and because we like got references and we knew how to like just do it technically. But yeah, I know it's very strange at the time, but it was really cool, because like again, I think the way comedy is portrayed can be a lot different versus like, I'm not going to use sophisticated fun. I'm going to use on Defy, because I think Defy is very like emotional, but like very I want to say commercial, like it is a commercial, but I think the way they approached it is very like camera movement intensive, a lot of lighting gags, where it's like with a comedy piece, like there is some camera movement, but it's very much focused more on the talent's performance, because that is where you actually get that genuine reaction, or like that connection, or getting that emotional feel, is how are the actors portraying their emotions versus like what is the camera doing. So I think there's that distinct difference. All this to say is that's something I want to push for this year, is doing a lot more comedy skits and hopefully building a reel off that.
Cool. Well, looking forward to seeing that.
Thanks.
And yeah, I know you're still trying to find your voice. I think everyone is, kind of, myself included, but what does that look like to you? Like, what do you want that to be? And I know you're still finding it, but inside, where does your inspiration come from, and what type of stories come out of you?
It's very interesting. I think the way I approach things is like, full transparency, I can't like conceptualize an idea from nothing. Like I know that about myself, but I am very good at like, if someone gave me like a brief or a prompt, I think I can make something out of that and kind of build off it. So for example, with Arterix, their whole thing is they're trying to showcase their Rebirth program, but they've already done all these like instructional videos of what Rebirth was. They wanted to see like what it meant outside of like what Rebirth is. So by that I mean like they wanted to create this human connection between the old pieces versus like people bringing in old pieces and new customers buying it. And their stipulation was they needed to shoot in the store. So I figured like it would be really cool if we can make this connection through the mirror, because if they're trying on pieces of clothing, like I want the piece of clothing to sort of tell the story in the mirror. So the new shopper is getting a sense of like, oh, this is where this jacket has been.
Yeah.
So, but it wouldn't be something otherwise I could think of like on the spot. I only thought about it because these were the things I had at my disposal. So I think very creatively in that way. Really for me, it's just whatever like comes through the door, like what opportunity can I see out of this? Like we have a bunch of projects come through all the time, but sometimes like if it doesn't interest me personally, then I won't take it on. And I think there's something to be said about like having a personal connection with the projects that we do. Another example is like I got this brief for it wasn't for college specifically, but like the idea of like the college experience. And my first run at it, I took it so like I went a very simple approach, just like doing it scene by scene. I'm like, this doesn't hit. And like I even made a quick VO script and it was like, this isn't like hitting the way I wanted to. And then the moment I had that realization that like I need to make this more personal in order to actually make it feel more real, that's where I had that shift in how I approached this, because it wasn't so much as like, here's the scene. It was, oh, this is what this scene means to me and like my personal experience with it. So approaching it that way is what I want to adopt whenever a project comes through the door, because I feel like that's where I'm going to get my voice out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can't really pigeonhole your ideas into something that doesn't align, right?
Yeah,
that's just forcing something that will never work. Okay, cool.
Agreed. Yeah,
cool. Well, yeah, I think that's a great place to end off today's discussion. Thank you so much for a fantastic talk. I learned arguably way too much.
Sorry.
about the financial side of a business, but it is great. It is definitely stuff that we as filmmakers need to learn. If you guys want to check out any of the videos or the projects that Adrian mentioned, they're all over on the Tenfold production page. Make sure you give that a follow as well. We're available on all the different streaming platforms, Spotify and such. So give us a follow there. And yeah, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Take it easy, guys.